Okay, here's where we're at so far. From the motors, I've run the wires up and I have soldered in line two 30 amp inline fuses. You can see where the solder connection is made right there in shrink tube. That is a 30 amp blade fuse. There's one fuse in each little black box. They run back to the motors. From there it runs into the Sabertooth 2x32. I'm using M1A as positive and B as negative, and M2A as positive and B as negative, and the two wires in the center are battery positive and negative. Tomorrow I'm going to wire up the receiver. Goes on this side if it'll focus. Come on, baby. It's not gonna. There we go. I gotta look at the chart again, but anyway, it goes in the four slots to the left. There, you've got ground 5-volt positive, and signal 1 and signal 2 for the two channels, throttle and steering. I soldered a XT90 connector onto the end of the battery right there. Obviously the black wire goes to the side marked minus and the red to the side marked plus. I put in an on-off switch. Now this on-off switch, see if I can flip this up. See, anyway, it says 12 volt 30 amp, and I used my ohm meter with the switch on. These are the only two terminals I got continuity through, so that's that's how it's going to go. Now for the battery, I'm building a battery box. You can see a sheet of 1/8 inch thick styrene underneath there, and the battery box is going to not come all the way to the top of the battery. It'll just come up to about here, and then I'll put a slot in one side that's just right to catch this as a stop, and it'll come across and feed through the slot on the other side, and then lock the battery down in its plastic box. And then I'm thinking about putting Velcro on the bottom of the plastic box and using that to stick it into the tank. So this will plug into here. We'll turn the power on. I got to get the receiver hooked up. I'm calling it a day today. We'll get to that tomorrow. I'll hook up the receiver and the radio. I'm probably just going to use a cheap Hobby King T6 to test it. And I can't put tracks on it until the Loctite 410 gets here, because I can't put the road wheels on until the rubber tires are glued in place. There's no way they're going to stay in place, and I'm not going to try and run it without gluing them and take a chance of one of them getting chewed up, because I can't get more tires. So patience, grasshopper. Yeah, so so that's where I'm at. Okay, none of this is set for placement. I can move stuff around anywhere I want, but the plan is to add another battery. That big honking 8,000 milliamp hour 6-cell LiPo, its only job is going to be to power the motors, and that's it. I'm going to put an IBU2 Pro in here. That's going to give me sound, that's going to give me smoke, that's going to give me turret rotation, which I want to use to rotate the remote MG34 on top. I'm going to use the FlySky i10 with a 10-channel receiver, so I'll use two pots to control my elevation and traverse on the main gun. But as far as pulling the trigger on the paintball cannon, I'm wondering if I can use the recoil. When you fire the cannon, the IBU, it's got provision for servo recoil. If I were to use that servo to pull the trigger on the paintball cannon, you'd have to look at the how-to article on the paintball site. They're using paintball guns and they use a servo to pull the trigger. Well, if I used that with the recoil in the IBU2, I think that it just pull the servo back, just like servo recoil, pull back quick and go forward slow. That part's fine, you know, just to pull that trigger on the paintball cannon. So I'm thinking ahead. So any ideas or suggestions or, you know, links to builds where guys have already done this kind of stuff, all that stuff's welcome. See you next time.